Good morning. We made it through those dragons. We have finally finished the 5-week sermon series on overcoming fear, which turned into 6, using Jose Stevens' book, Transforming Your Dragons. And how many of us recognized some of those dragons living in us? Yeah, I know. And equally importantly, given the state of the country and that huge division that we've seen in folks lately, how many of us are now clearly and easily able to recognize that all of the seemingly negative or even just annoying behavior in others comes from a place of fear? Yeah. That all of the belief in lack and limitation and division, the belief in that us versus them mentality, the drive to control everything around us or to cry out the many ways we feel others are controlling us, comes from a place in people's early development where they felt like they weren't loved as they are, or they weren't good enough, or they couldn't be who they are, or they felt like they had no voice. And all of those moments of not enoughness birthed loud, often unignorable dragons inside of us, roaring their pain at the world in many, many ways. And we can see that now, yes? But what comes next? The fact that we know this wonderful new formula doesn't mean that we know what to do with it. Right? I mean, yeah, we know that all of the whining and the rushing and the poor meing and the recklessness and the self-hatred and the self-harm and even the screaming and yelling and stomping and sometimes downright scary tantruming. We know now that it comes from fear, but what do we do with that knowledge? If you're thinking that it would be a wonderful idea if every time we encounter someone who is behaving in these ways, we marched right up and said, all of that is coming from a place of fear, I can assure you that is most definitely not the thing to do. Some thoughts are meant to be inside thoughts. I know I don't practice that all the time, but I am aware that some thoughts are meant to stay in here. But they can shape our outside actions. I imagine that wouldn't be received well, right? So what then? What do we do with this monumental new wisdom? I will tell you what to do. Be the love. What does that mean though, right? Again, let's not get it all twisted and act on those 3 short words, be the love, before we understand what the words mean, specifically what they mean when they're all put together like that. Because if we act before we understand, I imagine we would end up with just as bad a reaction as we would if we declared every rude or annoying person a fraidy cat, right? Imagine how many ways the following scenario could go very wrong very quickly, okay? So you're at the store, in line, and for whatever reason, I'm always picturing Walmart when I do a store. So, but people feel free to behave in Walmart. Now there's this guy ahead of you in line, and he is starting to get really belligerent with the cashier. Okay, the item that he brought up is not ringing up for the super low price that he anticipated. And so he's starting to stomp and get a little loud and get rude. Now, you know these dragony things, right? You get that whole new thing and you say to yourself on the inside thought, I know he's being nasty because he has one of those fear dragons that Jose Stevens taught about. And Reverend Gina said, be the love. So, and then you stride confidently over to the irate gentleman, wrap your arms around him and whisper, shh, 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 shh. You don't have to be afraid. You're perfect and lovable just the way you are. That might not end well for you, right? And maybe not for him or the clerk either. And there could be police involved. So what am I talking about when I say be the love? That's what you've got to tune into for the next 5 weeks as we learn exactly how to be the love. and just how amazing our lives and the lives of the people we love and the lives of all who encounter us can become. Because every one of us is filled with divine potential. Let's realize our potential and change the world. It is not as big a challenge as it seems. We just have to know what it means and do it. Now, our two inspirational readings told us a great deal about where we're going in this series. First, from 1 Peter chapter 4, verses 8 through 10. And it was from the first epistle of Peter. And you know I love me some words. Epistle means a series of letters. And if you have a lisp, it is a daunting word. So this is from the first epistle of Peter, chapter 4, verses 8 through 10. And he says, above all things, have fervent love toward one another, because love covers a multitude of sins. Be hospitable to others without grudging. So let every one of you, according to the gift that he's received from God, minister the same to your fellow man, like good stewards of the manifold grace of God. Okay, and then I'm gonna go back and get you so we don't get this one twisted up too. Covers a multitude of sins. What is a sin? We've talked about this. It is an archery term, and it means to miss the mark. It's a mistake, right? Be hospitable to others without grudging, because love covers a multitude of mistakes. Okay, and then from the Science of Mind on page 157, Ernest Holmes says, there will never be an end to God, nor to any of the eternal verities, that means truths, like truth, love, beauty. There will never be an end to God, nor to any of the attributes which are co-eternal and coexistent with God. If we are wise, we shall cultivate a faith in these realities. This is not a difficult task, but a thrilling experience. Okay, Gina, what does all of that tell me about how I'm supposed to do this be the love thing, right? Okay, so let's break apart that Bible verse. He says first that we are to fervently love our sisters, brothers, and others, right? Fervently. This means that we love unwaveringly and unshakingly. And let me be clear. Loving people doesn't necessarily mean keeping everyone actively engaged in your life. It doesn't mean not having boundaries, and it doesn't mean welcoming everyone we meet into our open arms whenever they need us. You all understand what I'm saying here, right? Believe it or not, you can choose to go no contact or limited contact or closely managed contact with someone and still love them. In fact, sometimes it is a heck of a lot easier to love someone when they're over there, right? Sometimes it's extra easy to love them when they're way over there, right? That's where you don't have to see or interact with them. Does that make sense, though? Like if they're not here, you can love them so much more easily. So fervently loving everyone, as Peter says, can actually mean that you have to allow distance in order to get to a loving place when you think of them. And to help with that fervent love, if you don't quite feel it, despite the distance, go back to those talks that we started several months ago. Because remember when we talked about how we can neither change the past, nor can we control the future? How we talked about the fact that the only time anything has ever happened and the only time anything ever will happen is now. And then a few weeks later, we talked about how our ego is that voice in our minds that says, among many, many other things, that we have enemies. And then we talked about how judgment holds us hostage. And then we did all of that work on forgiveness. And if you don't remember all of those, or if you weren't here for them, let me shamelessly plug the fact that all of those, each of the 5-week series, are on Facebook and YouTube. We're talking about over 40 weeks worth of material. And that sounds daunting, right? I know. 40 weeks worth of material. They're 30-minute talks. So it's not that big. So if you just put them on while you're driving, you can catch up pretty quick. Okay? Listen to 1 or 2 a day and and they'll be over with quick, and you'll be caught up, and you'll understand what I'm talking about. So, how to find fervent love for someone we like a whole lot better when we can't see or hear or otherwise have to encounter any reminder of. Okay? First, stay present. Know that all of those things that happen to make us want them to go away happened in the past, where we can't change them and where they're not happening anymore. Next, realize that every time we go into our memories and poke at that injury we had, every time we look at it and tell ourselves all the many ways that that person was horrible or wrong, we are smearing a heaping pile of nasty judgment all over it, right? And that is keeping us separated, not only from that person, but from anything or anyone which even vaguely resembles something about that person or situation. And that can be a real problem for us. When we use a past experience to color everything around us in our present, which even remotely hints at similarity, we cut off so many opportunities for joy and love. We judge that something which could be completely innocuous, like someone's appearance or their manner of speaking or their taste in style or music. You judge that it's a red flag because so-and-so did it, right? But when we color everyone in the world with the paintbrush of past pain, we soon discover that the world around us feels like a distinct shade of blue. Stop keeping track of who was right or wrong, who hurt and who was hurt. Stop rehashing the score like some kind of hyper-fixated umpire and leave it in the past, where it can only hurt you if you poke at it, okay? Next, recognize that whether or not it felt like it at the time, they probably didn't really know just how much they hurt you. Not really, right? They're probably abundantly clear that you were upset, and it's quite likely that they feel just as hurt by you as you do by them. At the very least, they may have found a way to justify their end of things by smearing some of that judgment we talked about on their mental image of you. In other words, you're kind of doing the same thing in opposite ways. And so you can begin to recognize that they aren't the enemy that our ego tells us they are, but rather someone who, whether we like it or not, whether we can see it on the surface or not, they taught us something. Let me be clear. We can choose to hide from that something by allowing the events to live within us so we can play those tapes back, so we can keep hurting ourselves and blame it on them. And yes, you heard me say that. We keep hurting ourselves and blaming it on them. They are tough words that may inspire really strong feelings, but stay with me here, okay? So we can allow those things to live within us, or we can stop playing the tapes and finally allow the whole mess to stay back in the already was but isn't now. And we can move forward. When we can do that, we can begin to see the lesson or purpose that came as a direct result of the situation. It's a choice. It's not always an easy choice to keep permanently at first, but it gets easier as you choose and choose again. Next, forgive. If it's in the past where neither you nor they can change anything, let it stay there. Don't carry a grudge. Remember, that is a very specifically worded part of what Peter was saying in that Bible verse. Put down that book of rights and wrongs and let go of that scorecard so you can move into peace. Yes, if whatever you've been holding on to was happening right here and right now, you'd be hurt and upset. But it's not. And if for no other reason, give thanks because it's not happening right now. You made it through. Give thanks because you got through it. And you don't have to do it ever again. Why? Because once you find a reason for gratitude, even if it's a tiny reason, forgiveness begins and healing starts. And yeah, I just gave you a Cliff Notes version of past talks, but it's not that I've got no new material. It's that everything I've been teaching this whole time, it is all tied together. So in order to keep moving forward, we have to pick up and use all of the tools in our ever-expanding toolbox. We have to find new events and lessons and choices to apply them to in order to shift our way of doing this thing called life into one of joy. At some point, if we keep utilizing all the tools, we will be master builders, creating a life and a world of peace and love that we all dream of. So yes, I am going to basically continue to repeat myself over and over, but hopefully each time I do it, I'll be applying it in a different way so that we can all see how vitally necessary each practice is to our lives. And in case you've lost track, we are still pulling apart that inspirational reading from the epistle of Peter, right? 1 Peter chapter 8. So the last sentence, let every one of you, according to the gift they've received from God, minister the same to your fellow men, like good stewards of the manifold grace of God. So what does it mean to be a good steward? And yes, this is again, word nerd o'clock. Okay, for those people keeping track, it's my jam. Cambridge says, a steward is a person whose job it is to organize a particular event or to provide services to particular people or to take care of a particular place. So we are supposed to provide services or take care of others by using the gifts given to us by God. That's what that's saying. Remember how I just said that we're all filled with divine potential? That's the stuff we've got to use, according to Peter's verse. And when we pull out those tools that we've been talking about and then add our most recent tools of recognizing that all of the messes, ours and everyone else's, somewhere along the way began with fear, we can clearly and finally allow that potential to shine. Ernest Holmes, if you are new here, you will recognize that we draw for him and many others. So if you want to come and talk with me about who he is and why we turn to him so often, just catch me on campus. He said on pages 41 and 42 of his most well-known book, The Science of Mind, he said, it is a beautiful and true thought to realize that every one of us stands in the shadow of a mighty mind, a pure intelligence and a divine givingness. Not alone unto the great comes the soft tread of the unseen guest. The arrogant have not perceived the simplicity of faith, but the pure in heart see God. The farmer has seen the heavenly host in their fields. The child has frolicked with him at play. The mother has clasped him to her breast, and the fond lover has seen him in the eyes of their beloved. We look too far away for reality. We have made a riddle out of simplicity. Therefore, we have not read the sermons written in stones, nor interpreted the light of love running through life. To return to a sane simplicity is one of the first and most important things to do. All of us receive some light, and this light is always the same light. There is one nature diffused throughout all nature, one God incarnated in all people. So I think what Peter is saying in that last sentence of our Bible verse is that we need to not only fervently love everyone, unshakingly, unwaveringly, and without any tarnish, caused by holding on to grudges, regardless of what happened in the past. And we need to teach others to love fervently, unshakingly, and unwaveringly. And how do we do this? By allowing our innate gifts to shine through moments and opportunities which unfold as we walk the pathway laid out for our lives. I've said this many times before. I don't think I've said it recently, but I've said this a whole lot because it's something I came to believe many decades ago, and which has been proven to me time and time again. So I'm going to keep on saying it. I believe that every single one of us is given opportunities, moments throughout our lives in which we are called to serve as angels for someone. Times when we are impelled to act in a way which transforms a moment of potential fear or pain for someone else. It could be a friend or a family member, but more often than not, it's been my observation that it happens with complete strangers. These are times when we have an intuitive pull to do or say something or to move in a different direction. And I will give an example of one moment that I recall from a guy I went to junior high with. And for the folks listening across the pond, those are the early years of secondary school. Okay. This was probably over a decade ago that he said this. His name is Robert. He posted a story on Facebook about something that he had just experienced that day. And I told him about my belief in each of us being called to be angels for others at key times throughout our lives. And I think that this was one of his opportunities, one in which he listened, acted, and transformed lives. He was driving along the 210 freeway in evening rush hour traffic on the way home from work. Okay, which for those of you who aren't from LA means that he was moving relatively slowly. And he noted that he usually stays in one of the far left two lanes. But for some reason, he didn't feel like moving over that day. So he was all the way in the slow lane. So he's inching along the LA freeway and he notices a car stopped on the shoulder with steam coming out of the hood. And the rear passenger door open and a lady standing outside. So basically, it looks like a lady's car overheated, so she was forced to stop, right? And maybe she had a passenger in the back seat. And it's not an unusual scene to encounter on any roadway in America, right? We've all seen a car on the side of the road with steam coming up from under the hood, and we've all kept right on driving, probably thinking something like, poor guy's car overheated. I hope they have AAA. Or, hey, I hope they get a hold of some water to fill the radiator when it cools. And that's something most of us who drive or who are regularly passengers in other people's cars have personally experienced, right? Sure, it's really aggravating and frustrating and upsetting in the moment, but it's not a humongous deal in the grand scheme of things, right? We wait until it's cooled down all the way, and then we add coolant or water to the radiator and pray that we don't have a leak. And then we start the car and we drive away. It's a pain in the proverbial butt, but it's not uncommon. But on this day, my old friend said that he felt like he had to stop, and he didn't know why. He just felt this strong pull to stop. And he said, it's not something I usually do, but I felt like it was really important to stop today. I don't know why. And I know this guy, he wouldn't have stopped. He's one of those people that just watches drama and keeps on sailing. Okay. So it really was out of the norm for him. So he gets out of his car, he pulls over, gets out of his car, and he walks up to introduce himself and ask how he can help. And as he gets close, he notices that smoke is starting to come out from the vents and fill the car. So he gets close and he sees the smoke filling the cab. It's filling the cab. It is really getting bad. And he sees that it's a lady with two small kids in the back. And these small kids are in car seats, and she is struggling to get one kid out of the car seat. So he runs up, doesn't say anything, moves her out of the way, and removes the whole car seat with the kid in it. Then rushes around to the other side, opens the door, and gets the other kid out. And seconds later, the car fills with flames. He said they barely made it away from the car. When emergency services got there, they said that if he hadn't stopped, at least one of the kids would have been severely injured, if not killed. Yeah, it was not good at all. So, yeah, he was an angel for that family that day. And yes, This is an extreme and memorable example. But my point is that he listened and acted. When we've stopped letting our past define our present and color our world, we begin to see clearly, perhaps for the first time. And we begin to hear something besides our ego shouting out a warning to avoid people based on the perceptions that we've adopted through keeping past patterns of fear in our present mind. We begin to hear when the world is calling for love. I said two things last week, which, although I wasn't sure that they would perfectly segue into this series material at the time, I didn't even think about it. I just put them in for part of that. I don't think ahead. Have you noticed that? I didn't realize how well they fit. But they're exactly what we need to keep our minds focused on. And I mean focused on throughout everything we do all the time, no matter what, not just during this. Like from here on, I want to share these. These are two really profound truths. The first is this from A Course in Miracles. Everything which happens, no matter what or when or how or why, everything coming from any person at any moment is love or a call for love. Either one is giving love or they're crying out for it. There is no sort of about it. It's absolute, right? The second is a widely known saying, and I don't know where it comes from, but it's all over the place, and I know we've all heard it. Maybe we haven't actually realized just how urgently important it is, though. So let yourself hear it with your heart so that it becomes a part of how you move through the world. And that is, there is no question for which love is not the answer. No problem for which love is not the solution. No cause for which love is not the means. When we know this fundamentally, we are open to hear and see our angel moments. We can finally step into our now, hear the call for love and answer. And the more we answer, the more we're called to fervently, unshakingly, and unwaveringly love all people all the time. In this way, we begin to become love. Come back for the next 4 talks. We will continue to teach you how to step into the you you've been hiding from yourself all your life. Spoiler alert, the real you is love. It could be no other way. And as Ernest Holmes said in the second of our inspirational readings today, this is not a difficult task, but a thrilling experience. By the end of this series, we can all step into that divine potential that is ours. And we'll finally be able to say with our whole chest and every ounce of our truth that wherever we are, God is, and all is well. Thank you.